Hello, friends, and welcome to Binge O'Clock, the podcast where we watch something and then we talk about it. I'm Joy Seldin, and I've seen almost everything.
I'm Danielle Ngo, and I've seen almost nothing.
And I'm Quinsey, and I'm excited to introduce you to Evil Chekhov.
Oh, I mean, Evil Chekhov is great. But that's the third round. We can't get there too fast. But thanks, everybody, for joining us. We are still watching Babylon 5. It's going to be a long road. I hope you're with us on this one. We're actually watching it on Tubi, so if you don't mind commercials, it's all there. And we're going to be discussing Season 1, Episodes 4, 5, and 6 this time. And, oh man, I feel like we can jump right into Infection. So This episode, even though it's named Infection, it still sort of lands in that trope for me a little bit. I like the spin that they put on it. But essentially, some tech finds its way onto the station, bonds with a person, and wreaks havoc. And it's just I really like the through line that you're able to pull with perfection and how dumb that is and how it doesn't exist. And especially given the writer and creator of the show and given how, like, you actually have like the Nazis, and it makes sense. I feel like if you did the storyline in something like Star Trek, you'd probably find something where it's like there'd be 3 examples, and one of them would be the Nazis. And then something else would be like, and this happened after your timeline, so we're just going to make it up.
Yes, there would be an easily identifiable Earth corollary from the past, a fake Earth corollary from the fake future, and a fake alien corollary from a fake alien species.
And the Cardassians with a blah, 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 blah. But I do like that since we're just dealing with humans who are only like 200 some odd years ahead of us, they're just like, like the Nazis.
Exactly.
The literal Nazis.
Easy, to the point. I want to say my first few notes have to do with the interviewer person. So like some of the B and C plot is like, there's also press on Babylon 5 trying to get information from Sinclair about the 2nd anniversary of Babylon 5. Now, how do they count anniversaries, Ethan?
I was gonna say, because like I have so many questions about 2nd anniversary, and yet the only one left. Like the first 2 notes I have written down, like note number 1 is Garibaldi is flirting with yet another woman. That is the first thing I wrote about this episode. And then the next thing I wrote was 2nd anniversary of Babylon 5 going online. Because how?
I believe the first anniversary is in the pilot. Like for the year from when the lights went on and like it was open for business, I think.
But like there were so many others and they all fell apart within a year.
There were 4 previous.
Okay. Feel like the answers to this question is a spoiler. Babylon 5.
Babylon's 1 through 4, yes.
I wish people could see Danielle's face.
I'm like,
sadness.
I know that the ISN reporter said that everyone thought they would last for 5 seconds, but I didn't think that meant they actually only lasted 5 seconds. But here we are, a 2nd anniversary.
But yes, I'm going to assume they mean Earth years.
Yes.
And oh boy, that's intense. I like that it's working on Babylon 5. Love
by
that.
Some miracle. A happy
Seriously,
accident.
it's like
I'm gonna assume.
Like, as busy as Babylon 5 is with how many aliens come and go, criss and cross, and it's just like, oh, okay. So you're just like, you're basically holding the whole thing together with like duct tape and prayer. And somehow it's working.
A lot
duct tape,
of prayer.
And exactly, I was going to say duct tape and prayer to every single god out there. Every single one.
We meet them in the next episode.
In the next episode, exactly. It's like a real like Betty and the Mummy sort of situation.
And amongst this nonsense, oh, by the way, before we stop talking about the journalist, I have to comment on Garibaldi basically just leaving her in a hallway when she doesn't know where she's going.
Well, she asks where the bathroom is.
She asked where the bathroom is, and then he pieced out of the hallway. So I'm just like, does she know how to get anywhere? Does she know how to get back to wherever? Is she just going to come out of the bathroom and be like, where am I?
Well, she apparently knows how to find her way onto the command deck because she ends up there at like the worst possible moment And Ivanova gets another good Ivanova line.
I love Ivanova so much.
You're too young to experience that much pain.
Too young to experience that much pain. These were 3 very good Ivanova in the background episodes, which I appreciate.
I liked, I described going back to the reporter for a minute, I get she's just trying to do her job, but she's very much that sort of 80s, 90s stereotype of a reporter who, because she's a journalist, she is like super, super entitled.
Yes.
To go wherever she feels like it and to get her story. And in my notes, I kind of described, she works for Interstellar Network News. And I have kind of described them in my notes as CNN meets Access Hollywood.
Oh, yeah, that sounds about right.
And
I mean,
Sinclair
also,
is very
she's
much
pretty.
She is pretty.
Sinclair I was like, is this pretty privilege or is this just, I'm a reporter, I go where I please? Why not both?
I'm reasonably sure it's the second one. She doesn't seem to trade on the pretty very much, but we didn't see. She had like 3 scenes.
Fair. That's fair. She actually didn't say very much.
No.
It felt very 90s of like, I'm a reporter trying to get the real scoop, but I can wear heels, dang it.
Yeah. She showed up to annoy people.
Yeah.
And then be left in hallways.
And succeed. She succeeded.
She got her interview eventually,
people.
Yes.
Although, she did.
Yeah. And like Sinclair specifically mentions that he doesn't want to talk to the reporter because the last time he did, he ended up on a slow trip to nowhere, essentially. The worst assignment of his life.
Yeah, I don't know how he managed to hide from her as long as he did. Which is so funny to me because when we see her again and they're talking at the end of the episode, I'm like, but he's so ridiculously eloquent. How did you mess that up, Sinclair?
Yeah.
Well, how green were you the first time you spoke to a reporter? But like,
I mean, if they got him right after the war.
Right after.
Right?
Yeah.
That's
right after the war.
Yeah.
Speaking of this weird mystery and no, actually, you know what? I take it back. Speaking of annoying people, the minute I met Vance, I was like, oh no, you're the exact person that I hate. I hate everything about you. All the things.
Can I talk about Vance for a minute?
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Okay, so
Jigs.
Vance Hendricks is our secret antagonist of the week. And this was actually my introduction to David McCallum. David McCallum.
It's a good introduction.
Ilya Kuryakin from Man from U.N.C.L.E., Ducky from NCIS, a couple episodes of The Outer Limits.
Everybody mark off on their bingo card because Danielle hasn't seen any of these things, so you get
anything
3 freebies.
That you just said.
Well,
3 freebies right there.
Never make her watch NCIS. That's punishment.
Oh, no. I might make her watch Outer Limits, though. I did love that show.
There you go. He's in 2 episodes of that, and they're both amazing.
Oh, nice.
But he's so short next to, like, Jerry Doyle and Michael O'Hare.
He's kind of tiny.
You see him between Garibaldi and Sinclair, and he's just, they're like 6 foot something or other, and he's like,
they're 2 football players.
Yeah, they're 2 football players and the class nerd.
Yeah, and a pencil pusher.
Yeah,
it's just very obvious which is which.
But he shows up as an academic turned. He was Dr. Franklin's archaeology professor. Well, no, it wasn't. It was Alien Anatomy and Culture was the class that he taught. But he's an archaeologist by profession, and he's moved into sort of corporate surveying, looking for alien technology on sort of dead planets, planets that aren't inhabited anymore. And Franklin, this is where you find out first that Stephen Franklin is a dyed-in-the-wool idealist, and I adore him.
A very snarky one.
Very, very
which
snarky.
I appreciate.
Yes.
Like, I love that he's an idealist and he's snarky.
And he's kind of a brat about it.
Yeah, definitely a brat about it.
Yeah, and I do appreciate his squeamishness about, and he calls it out very rightly for what it is, which is grave robbing.
Mm-hmm.
I must also acknowledge the realities of everything Vance says about the fact that academics are poorly paid and paperwork is terrible, and he's making more money finding other species technology than trying to develop any of his own or go on his own digs. But he's also dealing in dirty money, and they both know it.
Right? That's the thing. Like, I mean, I was mildly sympathetic until it became what I've stumbled upon is a bioweapon that took out an entire civilization. But yeah, I'm going to cash in on this, you know?
Yep.
I was not even sympathetic. So here's the thing. He rubbed me the wrong way the minute I met him, because anyone
what
who
about
says,
him?
anyone who says savor the mystery.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh, absolutely not. You are going to tell me what you're doing here or you're going to leave. I am the head medical officer of a gigantic space station. And how dare you, sir, tell me why you're here.
Stop wasting my time.
Instantly like, waste of my time. No, but like, this is the exact kind of jerk. I think I actually wrote down, oh, I see, he's crazy. And then I underlined crazy. Crazy was intercapped in my notes, and then I underlined.
Yeah. There is one thing I want to bring up. And so when I was watching this show, I was like 13, 14 years old. And my only exposure to sci-fi at that point had really just been Star Trek. All Star Trek, a little bit of Star Wars, but Star Trek.
Sounds about right.
So the focus in this show on the fact that Earth is still a capitalistic society and that money is such a driving force behind everything.
Yes.
It was so jarring to me. And as an adult, it's not jarring anymore. What it is painfully familiar.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh God, no. I have no sympathy for Vance. I have no sympathy for Vance, but I also get where he's coming from.
I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because the thing that I latched onto was like, so here's another white guy digging up indigenous populations and making money off of it, which has been the theme of archaeology as far back as I've known it.
Yeah.
So I was like,
fair.
oh, okay, so it's literally all the money you've ever made is all dirty, going back to before my time.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing has changed.
Yeah, I felt zero sympathy for him. I actually ended up feeling a little bit of sympathy for Nelson, who I quickly labeled a bully because he had 90s bully jaw.
And hair.
And I was like, you are 100% a bully. No ifs, ands, or buts. And then he straight up killed somebody. And I was like, yep, you're the bully.
He is the bully. He's also the butt monkey of the episode, I suppose.
I know. If I felt sympathy for anyone, it was a little bit for Nelson, actually, because I was like, I don't know if you deserve that. Like, maybe you deserve to go to jail, but I don't know if you deserve to be turned into a giant genocide machine. That feels extra.
That's
not what he was asking for.
No.
Who did I feel sympathy for in this episode?
I didn't really feel sympathy for anybody. I just understood where Vance's motivations were coming from because I work with government grants.
I'm pretty sure I wrote down something like, it's nice to know that in the future professors are still paid crappy wage. Yeah, no, I 100% did that. Nice to know professors are still being underpaid.
Keep an eye out in season 2 for Nelson's actor, because he comes, not Nelson, but Nelson's actor, Marshall Teague.
As another character.
He comes back,
Cool.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
I will make a note.
As a not human.
As a not human.
I love that. Well, I mean, speaking of which, before we sort of wrap up this episode, I do love the prosthetics for this future Ikaran technology. That whole chest plate, like, I just love I love how they were able to really grow what was happening to Nelson of what felt like real time. You know, it didn't feel rushed. It felt like a real takeover of this person. Mm-hmm. And I just like the prosthetic work on this show is so amazing. Like, I mean, not just in general for the characters we see every single episode. You know, you've got Londo and you've got Jakar and Delenn, but like, and then you have this character who's literally morphing into a giant war machine before your eyes, and it was so neat.
Mm-hmm. No, I totally agree. I think like the prosthetics in this episode were interesting, and my last thought on this episode, and the thing I feel like I have to talk about is Sinclair. Like, how do we not talk about Sinclair? in this episode. Who wants to go first?
I'll call out one thing that I clocked pretty early on where I was like, oh, Sinclair knows Shakespeare. And the line he's quoting definitely tells us what he thinks of Garibaldi.
Wait, I'm forgetting the line that you're talking about. Which line is it?
How sharper than a serpent's tooth.
And then the rest of the line is like, a spoiled child? No, an ungrateful child or something. And it was like Garibaldi was like jockeying for his position.
How sharper than a serpent's tooth is an ungrateful child, I believe.
Is an ungrateful child. Yes. And it's just like, oh, number one, you know Shakespeare. Number two, tell us how you really feel. But like, I didn't clock it as this, but I like that the show spells it out. When the last time you see Sinclair in this episode, actually the second to last time, before the last interview with the journalist, he is sort of recovering from his wounds from this massive fight that he had with a genocidal, murdering, armored man. And he pours himself a drink and he kind of chuckles to himself.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, you're just a thrill seeker. Like, you just don't know what to do with yourself. And it's like, it's that callback to the first episode we just did where it was just like, oh, he does go on away missions. But unlike Kirk, who kind of didn't have a reason to go on away missions, he actually is a thrill seeker and is maybe just looking to die in some kind of big, giant, flashy way. And Garibaldi clocks it and comes to talk to him about it. And one of my favorite lines that Sinclair says is like, I don't have an answer for you, and I should. And it's because, like, you know, he probably didn't clock it in himself because why would he?
Right.
But like, and I just love that Garibaldi is also like, okay, he's a flawed man, but he's very usually observant. At least there's that.
The thing you always have to remember about this show is that all of the Earth Force personnel, with the exception of the very young ones, are war veterans.
Yeah. Because the war only ended a decade ago.
Yes. This is going to start coming up soon. But Sinclair was in one of the most pivotal battles of the war, and it wrecked him.
No, I think you can see it.
Yes, but it's something that is always on the show creator's mind. It's always on the writer's mind, so it's always there in the character. I need to give a shout out to the late Michael O'Hare, who played Sinclair. This is a very irreverent shout out. He did Crazy Eyes really well.
He does, though.
He does. There's a whole big speech where he's talking down the Nelson genocide machine man, and he's just we're all aliens to one another, flawed, impure, different, and his eyes are just bugging out of his head. It's wonderful, and it's a wonderful speech.
It is a very good speech. You know, we sort of got inundated with a lot of like, I'm going to talk to this machine until it starts smoking in science fiction.
Yeah.
And I think this was a really interesting, an extremely nuanced way to handle something like that. And having, again, the direct corollary to, you know, the SS and to the Nazi idea of the perfect people who who Hitler didn't even fit into, and just being able to turn that on its heel and be like, yes, and then you slaughtered your entire civilization. It's just it's so great. And I love that you're able to like remove that from Nelson because like if this was an episode of Star Trek, Nelson would just be dead. So Nelson died because this thing took over his body. And it's like, instead, this thing just kind of went, oh, lol, nope. And like, just like receded back into the scarab or whatever it was. And I really like that, you know, Nelson was able to help fill in the gaps. Like, it's just such a well thought out plot. And it has such good character points along the way.
I feel like Joe Straczynski would be very grateful to you for saying that because he hates this episode.
Oh,
It's the first one he wrote for the series proper.
Really? Wait,
Yes.
why does he hate this episode?
Just because it had been a very long time between writing the pilot and getting to start writing scripts for the actual series. And he was just sort of trying to get back into the groove of it. And he doesn't, at least when it was aired, he did not particularly feel like it was his best work or that it was showing up the characters all that well. The next step, which is a good segue to the next episode if y'all are ready.
Nice.
Yeah.
The next episode, Parliament of Dreams, is the first episode that he wrote after the show had started production. And in my opinion, you can see him and the actors really starting to grasp who all of these characters are.
Sink their teeth into it. Yeah.
This is such a fun episode.
I love Parliament of Dreams.
This is one of my favorites. Not the least of which because we get Narn, Gilbert, and Sullivan.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We get Londo being the most Londo
Oh my gosh,
that has ever
Londoed.
And we get my favorite character in the entire series, who is Dylan's diplomatic attaché, Lanier, played by sci-fi veteran, actually, Bill Mumy, who was a child star and is famous for an episode of The Twilight Zone where he plays a little psychic terrorist of a child who keeps sending people he doesn't like into the cornfield until there's nobody left.
There were a few of those.
Not with the corn, though.
Not with the corn.
Literally,
the corn is special.
Proto-child of the corn. But more specifically for playing Will Robinson in Lost in Space.
Yeah, he's the original Will Robinson. I've never seen a child actor grow into what I assumed the children he played would be as adults. You know what I mean? Like sometimes there's like a huge divergence and they'll just completely go in the opposite direction. And sometimes, it's just so interesting to me that I'm just like, yeah, no, that would 100% be Will Robinson as a full grown adult. Absolutely.
But Lanier is a rather young Minbari right out of Temple, basically. It sounds like he came straight from the monastery.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I love him to
He's
pieces as soon as I saw him.
Wonderful, wide-eyed, innocent, and he's my baby, and I love him.
He is baby.
So I take it that means he becomes a more major part of the show, which I'm very excited to see.
Oh, yes. Yes, he does.
I also, speaking of new aids, why did everyone get a new aid in this episode? I love
Did you notice a pattern? I also noticed that pattern. I was like, huh.
Somebody here.
Been there. Veer has been there the whole time.
That's true. I was talking about more like Jakar and Nataf. Because Nataf joins in this episode too.
Well, there's
the day Veer is no longer there will be a very sad day for me.
Yeah, true.
There's a throwaway line from Jakar about what happened to his previous aide. That Kodaf had an unfortunate accident with an airlock.
Yes, I wrote that down. Previous aide died suspiciously in an airlock incident. I was like, wait a minute. Speaking of holding the station together with duct tape, what's happening here?
All I could think about was Battlestar Galactica because that was like the way to solve problems.
Madam
was
Airlock.
To throw people. Just throw Madam Airlock. Yep. Who's got an airlock? Is it free?
And
cool.
The Expanse too.
Yep.
Oh no, really?
Yeah, it's all over the place.
Honestly, if I was in space, that would probably be my answer to be like, I mean, we don't believe in the death penalty, but we believe in that airlock, so.
We won't kill you. Space will kill you.
Sorry, Ethan, go ahead.
No, that's the death penalty in Babylon 5 is to get spaced.
Amazing.
Oh,
I love that.
But actually, I don't know if it's the death penalty or if it's more like military fragging when there's somebody they don't like.
I would believe both. But yeah,
tomato.
The plot lines of this episode, just to sum up real quick, are I personally wrote down that I love that Earth wanted to be more religiously open and celebratory, and it's a huge logistics nightmare and problematic for literally anyone else who's trying to make it a reality. And I was just like, that rings true on so many different levels. You show and tell.
Yes.
On Babylon 5 of like, you show me yours, I'll show you mine, kind of like religious from our planets. Week long. And in the midst of this, Jakar is also might die. Jakar might die. I literally wrote down, oh no, Jakar can't die. He has to strangle Londo in 20 years. So
that's how you know you're safe.
Yeah, I watched the entire episode being like,
he's not gonna die. He's not gonna die. But I feel like those visions can be altered. Or at least Londo thinks they can be altered. Because when Londo went to go assassinate Jakar, and he was like, well, you know, I guess my vision is going to change, right? My death is going to be different. So I don't think they're set in stone.
They're not. They're possible futures, as I understand it. They can be altered, but it's also one of those things where you can change it, but something worse might happen.
It's a real Paul Atreides vision. Fair. Like, you might read that completely wrong. That's okay. You don't need to know Dune. I didn't know Dune for a very long time, and then they made a very pretty movie a couple of years ago, and now I like Dune.
Also, this episode, we meet Sinclair's on-again, off-again lady friend.
I hated that part of this episode, but then again,
I couldn't stand it either. And I know that I like schmaltz, but I don't like this. And I don't know how to describe the difference between those two things, but whatever was happening between Sinclair and Catherine in this episode was not for me.
Whatever is happening between Catherine Sakai and Sinclair is drawn directly from Joe Straczynski's own love life.
Really?
Yeah, no, I could tell, and that's why I hated it.
Yeah, that's exactly why you hated it.
As someone who had a long-standing, on-again, off-again, utterly toxic relationship, all I could think was like, no, you guys had it right the first time. You're terrible for each other, and you literally should never see each other again. And you should leave the station right now.
Yes, and they say it so many times during the episode. They're like, oh, we really can't re-enter this cycle. Oh, we really can't do this again. And I'm like, it's not that hard. You just don't.
I have bad news for you, Danielle.
I know that's me saying it's not that hard, and me saying it's not that hard is very different from everyone else saying.
Just flip the potato. Just flip the potato.
I'm like, you just don't. You flip the potato.
you flip the potato. You cut it on the flat side. Don't try and cut it on the round side. What are you doing? This is I would have us tell you that story, but that's essentially the story, good listeners. That's pretty much it. It's like Danielle is like, why aren't you flipping the table? And the rest of the world is like, no, I can get it. And it's like, no, you can't. Why? No, but like the fact that they repeated that over and over again, Danielle, is what vexed me so hard, because that is what happens in those terrible toxic relationships. You convince each other. You're like, nope, we're terrible for each other. It's not going to work. This isn't going to happen. Maybe we can be friends, but this shouldn't happen because here's our cycle. And you point to the cycle that's happened 7 or 8 times. And then it happens again because it's a cycle. Guess what? It's cyclical.
Yeah.
I have had that exact conversation. Only it wasn't how's your mother and how's your brother. Like, it was, like that was the only difference.
When they tried to make it jokey, I was like, no,
they
get
did.
out of
I know.
here.
They tried to joke about it, and I was like, please don't.
And they still end up in bed together.
Because one of them is feeling particularly like, I'm all alone here. I want to celebrate. And guess what? You're going to go celebrate with the closest thing that you've had a fling with. And it's the toxic one. And now you're in trouble. Because now I guess you try again. And like, I can't wait for it to crash and burn. I'm just staring at it. I'm like, no.
Is it? Wait.
I don't want it.
Joy, say yes or no to wanting this spoiler. Can we have a general sense of how many episodes we're going to have to spend staring at these two people? Like, on a scale
I wouldn't mind
of
having that spoiler,
one time
honestly.
on a scale of one-time fling to Dipper and Wendy, how much of this show
I don't know
do
if
I
he
have
even
to
understands
spend
that
staring at
reference.
these people?
I don't understand that reference.
The running joke last season for Gravity Falls is a 12-year-old is obsessed with like a 16-year-old for like a season and a half in a 2-season show. And I tried to explain to Danielle, I was like, so this becomes basically Dipper's whole personality, and it bothers me for a very long time. And it took a while for Danielle to be like, oh, because it just kept going.
We do see Sakai in some other episodes. Their relationship, I don't believe, is ever at the forefront of an episode again. But
fantastic.
But they do remain in a relationship.
Well, at least there's that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, as long as it's not the driving force for Sinclair's narrative, I will probably forgive the show for it.
I can confidently say it is not the driving force for Sinclair's narrative.
There's only one movie in which I will accept anything remotely resembling the thing we've just described, and that's Marrying Man, which stars Alec Baldwin and Kim Basinger. And it's literally about a couple who gets thrown together and then they keep marrying and divorcing each other. And it's a comedy and it's very funny. That's the only time. That's the only time I find it acceptable. All other times,
the universe gets one, and that's the one.
The universe gets one.
Side note, I desperately want to corral you two into watching the Alec Baldwin movie The Shadow with me at some point.
Yes, The Shadow is very good. I haven't seen it in years, but The Shadow is good. I think you'll like it, Danielle.
I don't know anything about it.
I like it.
That's good.
But yeah.
I might be a weirdo. I like everything.
No,
I'm a bad gauge.
That's not true, Joy.
No, I adore that movie, and nobody else I know likes it or has heard of it. And it formed a core part of my personality for many years, actually. So
I think
let's
it's fun.
watch it.
Yeah, moving on.
It's very noir, Danielle.
A break between. Well, of course it is, Joy. No,
it's because of course
I was like, if you like it, no.
We haven't gotten to the religious stuff.
The religious stuff. Okay.
The nation attempt.
Okay. Religious stuff. Londo being the most Londo.
Yes.
Not only, I love that scene, partly because Londo is the most Londo when he, like, climbs on the table and he loves polytheism. Polytheism is his bag. It is his favorite thing. Everybody's
he also loves
cute.
Polyamory, which I really like. I love that he's calling everybody cute.
Everybody's cute. He's cute.
Garibaldi's cute.
Garibaldi's cute. Even Garibaldi. But secretly, not secretly, because I'm saying it right now, my other favorite thing about this scene is that Ivanova really lets down her hair and just has the best time.
Yeah, no, I sat there being like, yes, let the Russian party.
Yes,
because she drank everyone else under the table.
She's drinking. She's in it.
She didn't know that was going to happen.
Who?
Only the two Centauri in that scene. So Londo and Veer knew that Peter Jurasik was going to climb up on the table.
Really?
Nobody else knew that. So you see Claudia Christian, who is Ivanova's actress, behind him, losing her damn mind, trying not to blow the scene. And she says nobody knew this was going to happen. And that's also, and then you see Mira Furlan as Delenn, who is very confused alien about this giant man who is on the table in front of her, calling her cute and shoving a small stone god into her plate.
It's even better that they didn't know. That's amazing.
My favorite part of that scene is actually new for this year. I've never noticed this before. During that whole scene, during the lead up to Londo climbing up on the table and exclaiming all of the names of his gods and becoming one with his inner self, she is playing with a lettuce leaf.
Oh yeah.
She's just fiddling with a lettuce leaf the way she was fiddling with the popcorn at the end of the first episode. She doesn't know what to do with food.
What do I do with this?
Food to the Minbari is a very sort of contemplative thing. So this is literally alien to her. In the best and the most complete way possible.
I just love that the Minbari religion it has like a food thing in it. So it's not even like they haven't eaten before. It's just that food is very specific. Yeah,
Which
no,
is
Londo.
a good segue to their religious practices. Unless you wanted to talk more about Londo, Choi.
No, I love how we get snippets of the history of their planet. Like, what happened to the Zon? They're all dead.
Well, the other thing I thought was really cool, and I didn't pick up on this as a kid, they have this giant festival every year that is commemorating when they were in this long planetary war with the other species that evolved on their planet that they eventually slaughtered.
Mm-hmm.
And they said every year we'd count up who had survived and celebrate. I love it.
Presumably the number grows smaller every year, unclear. Like, I
mean, unless people have babies.
I mean, they do breed.
I mean,
the Centauri do reproduce sexually.
This was the second time I got reminded of Battlestar Galactica, because there is a running counter of the number of humans who are still alive.
Yeah, there is. I forgot about that.
And I was like, oh, right. And then, quite wonderfully, there is actually no, you can add one because someone was born. Like, there is the one episode where it's like, no, someone had a baby. +1.
I totally forgot about that running counter. Oh, man.
Sorry, we will never watch that show for this podcast because too sad. Too much. But I highly recommend that show.
Too sad, too much, too confusing right at the end. But now I'm never going to be able to not think of the Zon as Cylons.
I mean,
oh no,
they've already got X in the name.
That's all it takes.
All it takes. All right, Minbari religious ceremonies.
Yeah,
and Linear being a baby.
How many of us can we take a consensus of like who thinks Delenn and Sinclair are now married and Sinclair is living in sin with Catherine?
They're definitely married.
I do.
I can't answer that.
She was making hardcore eye contact with him. Hardcore. But I guess it's hard to say.
That's indecent what she did with the fruit at the end. I'm sorry. She swallowed it very, very noticeably.
While maintaining eye contact, Delenn.
The thing I wrote down was Delenn and the commander, I'm ride or die.
Yeah. And because the thing is, I'm so happy that it was not Garibaldi that she was doing that with.
I do like that Garibaldi just flat out didn't even eat it or something, right?
He didn't even eat it.
No.
Yeah. He didn't even eat it.
He was like, no.
And then the assassination attempt, just really quickly, I really liked the mystery that they built because we as the audience don't have a lot to go on. So all we have is Jakar's paranoia and all this other stuff. But I also really like how it resolves itself, where he and the aide are just so buddy walking down the hall.
By some miracle, I don't even know how the show accomplished this. I was able to keep straight every single Narn character. How did that happen? Was it the actors? Was it the prosthetics? Was it the spectacles? Unclear.
So Jakar gets a new aide in this episode, but he also gets a death threat. But the death threat comes while he is preparing dinner and singing Narnish Gilbert and Sullivan to himself, which is that is the moment where Jakar's character kind of clicked for me. He's very stern and mysterious and kind of pompous and one note. And then you see him in his quarters and he's cooking himself what looks like a pig's head and singing. And it's so many fishies left in the sea, so many fishies, but no one for me.
It's literally a song about, should I date this girl or this girl?
Or maybe I should have a nap first.
Or maybe I should have a nap, but I should definitely eat something. It's I feel like I've never been let into a culture more than through this song.
Yeah. This is better than Klingon opera.
Absolutely.
I need to go back and rewatch the scene. It was so good, and I just didn't have time to go back and rewatch it. Otherwise, I would have. And I especially love the moment where he is about to bite into this pig's head of a thing and is interrupted. And then we just get the best Jakar snark. The best Jakar snark.
This is Ambassador Jakar's quarters. This is Ambassador Jakar's table. This is Ambassador Jakar's dinner. What part of this progression escapes you? I might have some of these lines memorized.
I mean, that one in particular was very
30,
good.
40, 30, 20, I'm not that old. 20, 30 years.
I'm so glad you had that one memorized. And if you hadn't had that one memorized, I wrote it down.
Oh, yeah, that's a running joke that Danielle is like, I'm going to make note of this line.
Because I relate to the one.
Also, were those live prawns?
Yes, those are crayfish. Yes, they were alive. They kept walking off the table. So like the actor is just keeps putting them back, and finally he just points at them with a stay put. I love that the Narns have an Assassin's Guild. It's very space fantasy.
Death Blossoms.
Yes, Death Blossoms. Yeah, this is
most extra Assassin's Guild.
I said last episode that this is a space opera, but it is also very much a space fantasy because you have things like Assassin's Guilds.
Yes.
And the Minbari, who are space elves.
100% space elves. And then we would be remiss if we didn't talk about Sinclair, who I guess, I don't know if he was just playing like coy, because damn him if he was, but it's just kind of, I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do for Earth yet, because of course all the other humans are like, what on earth are you going to do for Earth? Yeah. What are you going to say? And his presentation starts a little bit late because he was gathering, or at least all of the people of the different faiths of Earth together to be in a room to actually shake hands with everybody and to be individually introduced. And I got misty-eyed, but then I got very like, oh, this was the 90s and it's only slightly not racist.
Somebody asked Straczynski about that at the time, and his response was, I'm actually going to read this off of the Lurker's Guide page.
Sure, yeah.
Shout out to the Lurker's Guide.
Yeah.
Lurker's Guide to Babylon 5, my Bible. Straczynski's response to that...
Whether or not it was racist?
No, not whether or not it was racist, but the interpretation of, why do this instead? Why show this long line of humans from, like 300 different belief systems, instead of literally just saying, well, this is the one that's most dominant by population.
Right.
Sure.
Which, by 2250 whatever could be, Jedi,
literally
for all
anything.
I know.
Right. My money's on Shinto.
Potentially. He said, my thought was that it's a way of saying our dominant belief is that all beliefs are respected, which is very pretty.
I was going to say, like, that's a very lovely sentiment, but that is definitely not the dominant sentiment.
That wasn't the point of what Earth Force was trying to accomplish.
No. It was show and tell.
It was show and tell. Also, he deliberately...
You didn't show.
He deliberately put the atheist at the head of the line because Straczynski himself is an atheist.
Ah, interesting. See, the thing that was annoying to me about the line was that it started out as a bunch of religions, which is, again, the idea behind the festival. And then as they continued going, he started mixing religions with ethnicities.
Yeah.
And
that
was
just where
specific
I got
groups of people. And I was like, well, wait, what's happening here?
Yeah, there was, there was a Maori. There was, there was a gentleman from the Oglala Sioux tribe.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was an Australian Aborigine.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, those are cultures.
Correct.
What is their faith system?
Exactly. Like, that was what was annoying to me about that really long line.
Yeah.
That was what clocked as racist to me.
Yeah. And I'm like, I was like, 90s. And then the 90s happened again.
Just do like one more Google search. Just be like, okay, what faith system does this group of people subscribe to? Okay, that's what we're going to put into the script for the show.
It was 1994, so Googling was not an option.
Very true.
Was it
what did we have in 94? I don't remember.
Encyclopedia Britannica.
Encarta, maybe?
When
Maybe
did
you
we
had
ask
Encarta.
Jeeves?
Maybe. Wait. I'm gonna look up.
When did we
Encarta.
ask Jeeves?
I don't know. So,
I feel like Ask Jeeves was late 90s. I can look that up too.
The downside of coming and looking at the Lurker's Guide is that then I find more weird trivia.
Indeed.
This episode was originally aired up against a particular figure skating competition.
Oh?
Yeah, it was the head-to-head between Nancy Kerrigan and Tonya Harding.
Oh, interesting.
Which, if you recall, ended in a beating. Like a literal beating. The Babylon 5 did not do well against those ratings. They got a 23. No, that's
Encarta did come out in 1993. Look at that.
Oh, so they could have checked Encarta.
Ask Jeeves is 1996, Danielle.
Oh, 96. Okay. All right. So 3 years later.
Admittedly, I don't know if Encarta in 94 would have been able to tell you the name of the faith system of native Maori.
I mean, I genuinely would have, look, there's a ton that we still need to do in Hollywood to actually be inclusive. And we still get it wrong constantly all the time. And I can only imagine what that was like without the internet.
Fair.
And also underrepresented folks often didn't have the representation even within their own talent agencies and things like that. So it's not even like they could reference a talent agency and be like, hey, can we ask some questions? Because more often than not, it was just not done. Because you're only casting based on looks. You're not necessarily casting based on culture. But yeah, I got misty because I was brought up in the 90s, and that's the kind of schmaltz I like.
Yeah.
But I was instantly also like, oh, hang on. Like, I dried up almost instantly.
Yeah.
It's like, he kept talking, and I was like, oh, damn it.
I would just like to say for the record, there were 250 people in that line.
Wow.
Many of them were the actual individuals' names, and they did actually belong to those faith traditions and cultures. So they did that at least.
Yeah. Well, they get some props. Especially since they didn't have internet access.
They did not have Google. God, we need to move on, don't we?
Okay,
we
do. Episode 6, Mind War. I mean, I have the fewest notes on Mind War out of these 3 episodes.
Honestly, I was just watching Mind War.
That's what I mean. Like, which isn't to say that I didn't.
As well.
It's not that I didn't like it. I enjoyed it, but I just sat.
I will say there's a couple of takeaways I took away. Well done, Joy, from Mind War, which was it felt the most of these 3. It felt the most Star Trek, and that wasn't just because we had Chekhov, but it was also
Evil Chekhov. We're supposed to talk about Evil Chekhov.
He's so good. Yes, no, Walter Koenig plays a really good villain. He's done it a couple of times. This is the one that I know he's most famous for, playing sort of a bad guy, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, this felt the most like something happened to someone and they are going through a change and they need to be protected so that change can then follow through and finally finish. And I feel like that happened on Star Trek all the time. It was just like a thing blew up, but now something weird is happening to me. I don't know what's going on. you know,
standard plot. Within
the first 6 episodes have 2 episodes that reference how bad Psy-Corps is and how not just bad, but you could just be like, oh, they're bad, but devious and how it's probably also taking over the government because that's just easy for them. Talk about the privilege of just reaching for something and taking it just because you can. And I like that the Psy-Cops. Is that what Garibaldi calls them?
That's what that is what they're called.
That's
literally what they're called. They're called Psy-Cops. Psycops. The Psy-Cops.
I keep wanting to say Psy-Ops.
In the Psy-Corps. Yes, so it's because it's
my
not confusing at all.
poor typing skills when I was typing Psy-Cops versus Psy-Corps really struggled.
Yep. Oh, mine too. I have autocorrect and it got very confused. Catherine serves a function in this episode.
She does, you're right.
I did also write down, nice to know that coffeeholics still have a place in the future, because I'm pretty sure Catherine had coffee while she was in the quarters, but then also had coffee at her meeting.
Oh, I wrote down that I was glad that Babylon 5 and Deep Space Nine get their coffee mugs from the same vendor.
They're from the same place.
Space stations are us.
I love it when stuff like that happens.
Yeah.
You have to be very careful. This will be the last BG3 comment I make.
In this episode.
This will be the last Battlestar Galactica.
In this podcast episode, or
in this episode. I've talked about it a lot.
I hadn't heard any Baldur's Gate 3
references
No.
Yet. I'm not going to say anything about Baldur's Gate. This is the last Battlestar Galactica comment I'm going to make in this episode. But like one of my favorite things is looking at the behind the scenes where they were like, we had to be very careful, and specifically not Star Trek. They had to like very specifically have paper and have phones.
Yes.
And things like that. So whenever I see coffee mugs that I'm just like, oh, be careful. Is it too close? Is the design too similar? You have to be very careful about these things.
They had no aliens. They could have got away with so much.
So here's the thing. I love Ironheart as a character. I think he's really interesting, and I think he's extremely sympathetic. I don't like that he had a relationship with Talia. Bad mouthfeel. There
were a lot of ex relationships that came out in these 3 episodes, and I was not a fan of any single one of them.
So the thing about Talia having had a relationship with her instructor, the more you find out about the Psi Corps, the more you realize that this happens a lot because it's an incredibly insular community.
I mean, I wasn't surprised.
It's not good. It makes me feel icky. It's just it's kind of get used to it in this narrative.
It's like, it's not only is it icky, but then I had to hear about what it was like for them to have sex, and I was like, but like, you could have just told me that they did it. I didn't need to hear your 6-minute description.
But just before hearing that description, you also understand how much higher in psychic ability he is. So there's this moment of like, okay, hang on.
This journey, and
not only is this a bad power dynamic of hot for teacher, but now it's a bad power dynamic of like, oh, he could literally be just taking over your brain, and you may or may not know, because he's so much more powerful than you, being like the instructor. And I was just like, oh, absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
I was absolutely so not here for it on so many levels.
You want to talk about things that nobody picked up on in the 90s. Nobody. That.
Well, no. People picked up on them, but the thing about the 90s is that was like the feather in your cap.
Mm-hmm.
This was a good thing. Did you bet a teacher? Did a teacher bet a student? Good on you. Like, this was the thing people celebrated, which is gross and terrible and awful, and no one should have ever done that.
I wasn't, not that specifically. I meant the difference in the power levels between the different levels of telepath. It's not from a Doyleist perspective, not from an outside perspective, from an inside perspective, from inside the show. It's interesting that nobody ever comments on that. Oh, yeah. Because particularly with hang on, I'm trying to remember when this happens. There's a future episode where you meet another of Talia's exes. And it's interesting to me in hindsight that didn't come up.
The what P level they were?
The difference. Because
can I ask, do we know what P level Winters is, or is that still information I'm waiting for?
Oh no, we find out she announces that in her first scene. She's a P5.
Oh, okay. I totally missed that. She's a P5 and these people are at 10? Come on.
She's a Ironheart, other instructors are P10s, and then the Psychops are P12s.
Yeah, see, I wrote that down in this episode, but the P levels were not a thing that I knew were relevant, so I didn't write down hers. She's 5.
Yeah, she's
now I
level.
really did shout into my
Sorry, Paul. We love you, Paul. Thank you, Paul.
Sorry, Paul.
No, yeah,
that's very bad.
The other thing that comes down to it is, like, again, this was made in the 90s. And again, that is something that is like, that's like talking about age gap. Like, people are just like, yeah, he's 50 and she's 20. I don't know what you're talking about. Nobody actually, it's like, yeah, but did he meet her when she was 16? Maybe. We don't know. You know, like, it's this weird, like, we just accepted it. Like, my favorite thing was reading an article of Laura Dern talking about the first Jurassic Park and coming back to do this most recent Jurassic Park and being like, oh, yeah, I didn't even think about the age difference. And here I am. And oh boy. And like Laura Dern, who like was within it in the 90s, just like, oh, yeah, no. No. Like my character, oh, no, there was a minimum of 20 years between us. Absolutely not. And it just like nobody looked at it. And like that just reads to me like, yeah, no one was going to look at that. Why would you look at that? And now he's godlike. And I was just like, don't give her a gift.
He's a
just
glowing
just go.
orb. She didn't ask for this. She doesn't want to be telekinetic, especially when all of the other telekinetics are unstable.
80% of them go crazy. Like, wait a minute. How is this a gift?
And then you remember that she was like born into the Psy-Corps and didn't really have a choice about being there in the first place.
I know. I assume the show will not address any of these, and we're just thinking about it too hard.
I know. I feel like because they already taught. I feel like the fact that they're making out the Psy-Corps to be sort of like this malicious, shadowy, taking over the government.
Yeah, but these are very specific grievances. You know what I mean? Like, we could talk about how crappy the government is, but are they going to deal with this specific?
They did give us Ivanova, though, as sort of like a foil to Winters, and seeing like,
which I really
like her seeing Winters as a victim in this because she does, right?
Yeah.
Like if that came up in episode 2, I could see
1. First episode.
1. Yeah, 1.
They cover a lot in episode 1.
Coming up again? ? I don't know.
I do like that Ivanova is the one to be like, stop it, and to like put her hand on Sinclair's shoulder and like actually hand her water when she's basically being abused by the Psychops. I appreciated that. I also really like the other lady cop, and I was a little sad to see her destroyed so soon.
I mean, especially annoying because Bester survives. I'm like, dude, so
I know.
So Ironheart is going to disintegrate Kelsey, but not Bester? Okay.
Well, in theory, Bester is slightly more powerful, I guess.
So Bester then he should have disintegrated him.
Bester had also been knocked out and was no longer an active threat.
That's true. He didn't want to destroy either of them.
I guess, but it's like with one of them, he disintegrated her entire being and her gun, and with the other one, he disintegrated only the gun.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think
unless I looked at it wrong. I don't know. That's how I saw it.
The other thing I really like about Ironheart is there's stuff I don't like about him, but I mean, relationships are complicated. But like the thing I do like about him is how he talks about this process and like how he explains what's happening to him and what he witnessed. Because there's still a lot in there that's all jumbled together, as Sinclair references later. Practical gibberish by the time I was talking to him. Like, your words just can't catch up with the rest of your brain. I don't know. I liked it. I appreciated the way they showed it. I liked that it was a black guy. I like the casting for Ironheart.
William Allen Young, who played Jason Ironheart, have you seen District 9?
Yes, but years ago.
He's
too long ago to remember.
He is in it, and that's all I know because I have never seen District 9, but he is in District 9. I also do want to mention Walter Koenig. Evil Chekhov's full name is Alfred Bester, and he is deliberately named after a sci-fi author from the 1950s who wrote the book that I know best is called The Star's My Destination, but he also wrote one called The Demolished Man, which is about telepathic cops. So this is a very deliberate call out because another classic sci-fi writer, Harlan Ellison, you'll see him in the credits for every episode. He is sort of a conceptual consultant, and he and the original Bester were buddies. So it's nice.
He's written homage. Like a ton of stuff, right?
Harlan Ellison is one of the most famous sci-fi writers of the 20th century, and Straczynski was actually, I believe, the executor of his estate.
Really?
I wouldn't be surprised. All those dudes talk.
Something like
literally
that.
all of them talk.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
I'm pretty sure like George R.R. Martin was like besties with all these people as well.
I mean, Ellison predates Straczynski because Straczynski grew up reading Ellison's stuff.
Yeah. No, Ellison was definitely prolific by the time the 70s hit.
Yes, and he also wrote, Nella can correct me if I'm wrong. Nella can correct me in post. I believe he also wrote Ellison wrote one of the most famous episodes of the original series of Star Trek, which was the Stone Donut episode. The one where they go back to the Spock, Kirk and Spock, McCoy gets injected with amphetamines or something and ends up in like the Depression, and Kirk and Spock have to go back and find him, and I'm being a bad Trekkie right now.
No, it's The City on the Edge of Forever.
Thank you.
It was Ellison and Roddenberry.
Yes, okay, because Ellison's original teleplay had to do with actual drug dealing, and then it got so heavily rewritten he was so mad.
Mm-hmm. That is a little sad. I think I would have liked to have seen that. It is for those of you who haven't watched any Star Trek, first of all, where have you been? No, I'm kidding. No shade. It's one of the 3 episodes we're talking about, Babylon 5. Like, that one also deals with some really real world consequences of like time travel, making hard decisions because you know what the outcome will be. Has one of the best actual conflicts, in my opinion, that they dealt with in all of the time travel nonsense that Star Trek actually did.
Yes.
Which is like, oh, you have an actual conflict this episode. Good job.
Hold on. I do want to say the B plot of Mind War seems like nothing. Sakai having to go and survey a planet. She needs Jakar's permission because it's under Narn control. He really doesn't want her to go there because he says it's not a healthy place. She ignores him. She goes there anyway, and she sees something. She sees this enormous, vast, incomprehensible, non-Euclidean space thing. Spaceship-looking thing. And it knocks her out of orbit. She almost crashes. She's rescued by the Narns. And she gets back and she asks Jakar, what was that? And he basically says, we don't know.
Yeah.
It's enormous and vast and old. And we have tried communicating with it, but we are as ants. There's a lovely little metaphor about ants that he does. It's really sweet. Ants in space.
Absolutely, ants in space. No, yeah, I love that he is essentially like, no, this is a protected planet under Narn control because they congregate here and we don't know what they are, and
they don't notice us.
Yeah, like we're literally just kind of here. If they ever decide to talk to us, that'd be really cool. But in the meantime, we're mostly just trying to save everyone else from bumbling into them and dying.
Right.
Yeah, Jakar also gets a line in this episode that is kind of, not a thesis of the show, but it's a theme that comes back again and again and again. And he says, no one here is exactly what he appears.
Yes, I love that.
It comes back again and again and again, and it's interesting that it came up in this episode in particular, because somebody showed up in this episode who is emphatically not what they appear. And that is all I'm going to say.
Very exciting.
And let the guessing begin. No, I'm kidding. No, I look forward to uncovering that. I like that Jakar, because Sakai is like, why? And he's like, why not? And she's like, that's not an answer. And he's like, isn't it? Like, I don't want Sinclair to be upset if you died. Like, what?
Bad for business.
What would your dying have served me? Not at all. Like,
I love that entire last scene.
And like, it cost me nothing to save you. Like, I just love that Jakar was like, of course I just did that. Why wouldn't I?
Because it seemed like a good idea at the time.
I have a couple. I have like 3 ideas for what my one more things could be. So if someone else wants to go first, I will have plenty of backups.
I mean, I think just to touch on Sinclair real quick. Oh, no, sorry. I do have one more thing that we actually didn't talk about. They're battle sweatshirts. When they go into battle, they literally put on a sweatshirt with a shoulder pad in it, and it's got some silver-looking stuff on the front, and that apparently protects them from beings that are too powerful and turn you into a shadow on a wall.
The little shiny decals.
I appreciate that security on Babylon 5 actually gets like flak jackets and protective gear, because I have never seen any of the security details in Star Trek ever getting so much as a plastic shield.
That's fair. That's very true.
You're not wrong. It didn't read to me as any kind of protection, and then they were able to survive a blast, and I was like, oh, I guess it's doing something.
It's static repelling.
It was just so funny to me. I was just like, did you change your whole physical clothes? Like, you didn't just put on armor. You just, changed out into a different
Yeah, they put on a
blazer.
different sweater.
It really did, honest to God, read like a sweatshirt to me. I was just like, this reads like a sweatshirt. I don't know how else to explain it to you. I feel like I've seen that sweatshirt in Soho. That's just it.
You know what the vibe is? That's like a David Rose sweatshirt.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
that's
he
exactly
would wear that
what that's
sweatshirt.
like. 100%. Yeah, no, I think I'll leave it with that. I mean, the other thing I was going to mention about Sinclair is his last sort of moment with the journalist. I feel like makes me think more about who he might be as a person, as opposed to like, oh, not only do you know some Shakespeare, like you seem to genuinely understand, the goings on of your planet, and to be plugged in not just an artistic, almost, like poetic way, but like in a real world, down home, like earthen, tactile way.
I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, loves his Tennyson. But like, one of the things I was going to say about Sinclair earlier, and then I just forgot because we got caught up in talking about other things. So this will be one of my one more things. It's like, I really enjoy the way this show builds out Sinclair's character, because it's like breadcrumbs, and you just get a tiny little thing now and then. And I'm so used to the type of show that puts the captain, well, I know he's not a captain, but like the commander, right? I'm so used to the type of show that puts the commander front and center, right? And it's like season 1, episode 1, it's the worst battle of his life, right? And then that's the thing that defines him for the rest of the show. And we don't really get that here. Like, the very first time we meet Sinclair, the first thing we learn about him is that he's not a people person. When he has free time, he goes and sits by himself. And I love that. And then we figure out little tiny things like that about him all along the way. Which I really enjoy that about this show.
Yeah, they're doing a good job.
This is not this never comes up in the show. It comes up in one of the extra canonical tie-in novels. But Sinclair's mother was a historian of Earth culture. Specifically humor.
Interesting.
And she was a historian of humor.
Really?
Yeah.
I like that.
So
very curious.
Yeah.
Ethan,
also,
did you have one more thing? Oh, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I don't know where that thought was going. Do I have one more thing? I would like to, two things. One, I want, for people who haven't seen this show and who have only ever seen Walter Koenig in Star Trek as Pavel Chekhov, you have no idea how menacing this character is. This character of Bester the Psychop. And it's not just the lack of the over-the-top fake Russian accent. Chekhov, as a character, was a very open, facially expressive person. For a Russian, not particularly self-contained, I would say. There was really, he was such a baby. There was nothing, he was a kid, he was appealing to kids and young people in that character. Bester is so tightly controlled, and the control extends to the way Koenig uses his face. It's not
I would agree.
It's not a Vulcan sort of expressionless thing. It's always a very pleasant smile. but it's always plastered on.
Yeah.
It's creepy. It's creepy is what it is.
It's 100% creepy. To sort of add on to what you're talking about, one of my favorite metaphors that Laurel K. Hamilton uses a lot of the time. I don't know, metaphor is a bit of a stretch, but Laurel K. Hamilton wrote like a Vampire Hunter series, then the Anita Blake series, lots and lots of books, varying degrees of read it, don't read it. However, the thing that I really enjoy is Anita Blake herself has a very practiced, very emotionless, I'm going to let the emotion drain from my face so you know I'm serious, because she herself is a very small, petite, pretty girl. And so she essentially like trained herself to have assassin face. And it's one of my favorite things because it's like she starts to recognize similar faces in the people around her when, you know, stuff hits the fan, and she's just like, oh, okay, you mean business. But every now and then there'll be someone whose default face is a smile. And she's just like, this is weird. There's something additionally unsettling. It's like you can be completely emotionless, but then if you add a smile, it's like, oh dear God.
The other thing I wanted to bring up, which we talked about before we started recording, is the fact that the Narn assassin wears glasses.
Oh, yeah.
The Narn assassin wears glasses, and Jakar and his new aide, Natoth, take great pleasure in smashing the spectacles off screen. But I forget where it was, because I didn't find it on the episode page for the Lurker's Guide. The Narn don't have assistive devices.
Oh, that's interesting.
They don't have assistive devices. It's partly cultural and partly the fact that they were under Centauri occupation for 100 years and are still sort of tech poor.
Right.
So they have to crib things like glasses and probably prosthetic limbs and prosthetic eyes, which comes up later, from other species.
Yeah, no, I love that humans gave the galaxy glasses.
What an interesting detail. I like that. Okay, I have two more one more things.
Yes.
Joy, I was telling Ethan when you dropped off temporarily that I feel like henceforth I will always have one more things, because one of them is just going to have to be a really good Ivanova quote. Like every time I will pick one, I will say it, and then I'll say an actual one more thing.
Yeah. No, and I'm down. I'm down for it.
My favorite Ivanova quote, all the moral fiber of Jack the Ripper. What do you do in your spare time? Juggle babies over a fire pit? Oops, there goes another calculated risk.
I had assumed that you would write down the quote. So I feel like I heard it. I feel like I heard it and went, Danielle's going to write that down. Lady, you are the situation is one of the best quotes, I think, in this entire show so far.
Can that
in
be
all
the
these
episode
6
title?
episodes.
Lady, you are the situation. Here's the thing, like, I think that at some point in the next few weeks, just given how everything is going for me at work, at some point, I am going to look at someone, ask a question, and then say, oops, there goes another calculated risk, and they're going to have no idea what I am referencing, and it's going to bring me so much joy. so much joy.
Absolutely.
So that was my first of my one more things. And my second is that I'm never going to let go of how much of a sleazebag what's his face is, whose name I'm blanking on at this exact moment. Starts with a G. Hits on everyone. Garibaldi. I will never let go of how much of a sleazebag he is unless the show decides to completely rewrite this man's character. Because the fact that
I know.
In the first minute of episode 4, he hits on the journalists. In the first minute of episode 5, he's the one who eyeballs Catherine. And I was like, really? Another one? And it turns out it was something different. And then at the beginning of episode 6, we get the elevator scene with him and Winters. Did we? What?
He got what was coming to him in that scene.
Yeah. And I was so pleased. I was so happy when she just
I was especially pleased.
I
was definitely especially pleased.
Smelling her hair when they were standing in the elevator together was disgusting. And so I'm really glad he got elbowed in the stomach. It was fantastic.
And she could clearly hear whatever he was thinking.
Yes.
Which is, yeah.
Oh no, why did I think I had a third one more thing? Oh no, that's fine. I'll tweet it if I think about it.
Or you can mention it the next time we record,
Or I'll mention it next time. I'll write it down.
Yeah.
I would just like to say one more thing, which is very brief. In at the beginning of Mind War, where Sakai and Sinclair are like in his quarters and she's in a towel, and she says, I forget what comment she says, but then she ends up her sentence with "what could go wrong," and you see Sinclair kind of roll his eyes because he knows what kind of show he's in.
Yeah. Correct.
Because he knows what kind of show he's in.
He understands the narrative.
Absolutely.
This is not
Absolutely.
This is a man who knows he's in Dracula.
Yeah. Yes.
Perfect. Okay, that was it, right? That's the end of the episode? Okay.
Yes.
Wait, Ethan, do you want to share your details? Where can people find you?
I'm at Ethan Quinsey on Patreon and Blue Sky and Tumblr as Gaslight Gallows.
Perfect. And if you would like to find more Binge O'Clock, we would love to hear from you. Please check us out at Binge O'Clock Pod on Twitter and Facebook, where this week you don't get a question, you get a challenge. Say 3 Narn names 3 times fast. You can also email us at bingeoclockpod@gmail.com. And don't forget, we have a Patreon. Find us at patreon.com/bachpod.
That's right. And tell your friends, tell your family, tell your loved ones, tell the live lobsters in your life about Binge O'Clock, and we will see you next time.